I vow to Fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. Okay, we are in the native direction, and we've been talking about the meanings of the Buddha names. And we will now talk about the Bodhidharma Buddha. According to Master Ching Kung, Bodhidharma Buddha represents the supreme Dharma coming directly from the Buddhas. And it is the compassion of the Buddha that he expounds the Dharma, the truth, to sentient beings so that we all can realize the enlightenment. So an important aspect of studying Buddhism and realizing the enlightenment is compassion. Enlightenment is what the Buddha has attained. Compassion is the expression of that enlightenment. And today we'll talk about why we should cultivate compassion and what does that have to do with enlightenment. Buddhist compassion, and that's called metta. Metta means friendship. Compassion is different from love that we come to know in the world. Compassion here means care for others without expecting returns or without egoistic attachment. So it's different. So we should understand that to not confuse ourselves with compassion that we cultivate in Buddhism and the worldly kindness that we have for the world. And why the two are different, and why is it important for us to focus on compassion. So what is the difference between Buddhist compassion compared to the world, the kindness of the world, and why do we need to focus on compassion, and what does it have to do with enlightenment? Okay, so compassion is different from love. And love here is egoistic kind of private love. It's more of a personal love. There are 4 conditions that can turn affection into a private or personal love. One is through parent-child relationship, and it's often characterized as karmic relationship, a karmic debt. For example, in a parent-child relationship, a parent in the past owned karmic debt to that child. And when in this lifetime, when that child is now in the family, is born into the family of that parent will care more about that particular child, more than any other child, more than any other family member. So it's somehow that the parent likes or loves that particular child more, and it's because of that karmic debt. Or for example, in a group of friends, we like our friends, but there is one particular person that we like to focus on more. We are more concerned, we are more attentive, and it's not just anybody, but that particular person that we have more concern, more favorable feelings, and more favorable treatment towards that person. And it is because of that karmic debt that we have with that person. So what is karmic debt? Karmic debt is in the past that we somehow received help from somebody, whether it's financially, physically, emotionally, that we receive help from them and we owe their gratitude to them. And so later on, when that karmic debt comes to fruition, we somehow will have this affection, this concern towards that person. And that person may be indifferent to us, but we have this attraction towards that person. For example, and it drives us to care more about that person. It drives us to pay more attention about that person. And this caring is conditional, and it's not altruistic, it's not selfless, because it's emotionally driven and it's a product of the karmic debt. And we may be protective of that person, but really is karmically driven. Because after a period of paying that karmic debt concerning for that person, that feeling of gratitude towards them, it's gone, and one becomes neutral and indifferent again. And so there are those whose friendships were very strong at the beginning, but then after some time, they became indifferent, became like strangers, and in some cases, even they became enemies to each other. So such affection is not true, and it is not permanent. Okay? And because of a karmic debt, so it's not altruistic, it's not selfless, it's not metta, it's not Buddhist compassion. The second kind of affection is romantic love or romance. And this kind of affection is so strong that people have often mistaken it for real permanent love, true happiness, because it is just so strong. And so strong that people over history have developed poetry, they praise it, right? They make even principles, life principle out of it. But but this affection is really is strong and is special. And while romantic love can bring great joy, and it can also bring great pain and suffering. So that's the downside to it. And so why is that? Why is it that such great joy can bring great pain? Well, it is because of the egoistic nature of that. And it's so easy when we have selfishness in a relationship, it is very easy to cause that person to become jealous and to become demanding. And relationships and marriages are really emotionally demanding, very burdensome. And it can really make, marriages can be even more complicated than rocket science. It's very complicated, and we have lived for, human existence has been lived for tens of thousands of years, but we haven't really mastered that subject, right? And it's because of selfishness that makes things very difficult. Selfishness drives a person to be very demanding, wanting to be served by the others. So it can put a lot of emotional burden on the other person because of selfishness. So as long as the other person still owes karmic debt, the other person will continue to tolerate such burden, will tolerate such demand. But once the karmic debts are repaid, then they will part their ways. So those in relationships are not bad. It's the selfishness that is bad. That is the egoistic attachment that is bad. That spoils everything. There are marriages that are very happy, very joyful. And if you observe them, you will notice one thing in common, and that is they are attentive to each other. They want to serve the other. They want to make the other person happy. And the other person is mutually the same. They want to make the other person happy as well. And so that mutual respect, that mutual concern for each other is what makes a marriage, a relationship last. And that is a part of selflessness of it. Right? So whether it's in cultivation or in life or in relationship, the truth is the same. And we've learned this from the Four Noble Truths, that selfishness leads to suffering. So when we have relationship, the relationship can bring great joy as long as there is selflessness. And Buddhism is something that we can learn. It's not that we avoid everything, that we separate ourselves from the rest of the world. But Buddhism, the principle of Buddhism is for us to incorporate it, to live it, to experience it. And once we live and experience it, we can find great joy in it, because we know the conditions for joy, and we know how to avoid suffering and how to increase joy. And it is through the practice of selflessness. Okay? So the more selflessness, the more happiness there is. And that is true whether it's in Buddhist cultivation or it's in life or in personal relationship. So when the spouses are happy, they're happy to care for each other. That's a sign of selflessness, meaning they put the other person before them, and the other person puts them before them, and therefore there is mutual consideration, mutual interaction of that selflessness, as opposed to demanding to be served, demanding to be taken care of. They tend to last longer because of that selflessness. So that's the second kind of relationship. The third kind of relationship comes from family relations, right? Because they bring joy, benefits to each other, they care for each other, and they are grateful for each other, and that forms a family relationship. But it's also karmically related as well. And it's not here, I'm emphasizing here that while there is joy and mutual respect, and but it's not Buddhist compassion. We may treat our siblings, our family, with love, but that is not compassion, because there is still egoistic aspect of it. The fourth is that love or affection that comes from attraction towards somebody with special characteristics, special talents, like celebrities. Right? There are fans who are crazy enough to kill themselves because their adored, beloved celebrity has gotten married and they're no longer available, right? So because that singer, that actor has some special characteristics, special abilities that they form affection, and they want to care for that celebrity. They want to make sure that celebrity continues to be healthy so it can sing better, perform better. But that affection, that caring, is not Buddhist compassion, right? Because it lacks the selflessness aspect of it. In Living with Kindness, Sankarsita, in his book, he says that when affection or relationship is based on appetite or possessiveness, love always has potential to turn sour. At the end, it turns bad. And that is because the appetite, the pursuit of it, could be thwarted. You could lose that pursuit. You lose the interest in that pursuit, that possessiveness. At the beginning, you fight to possess it, but after a while, you may lose interest in that. Right? Somebody could be chasing the other person for months or years, and after they, they acquire, I wouldn't say acquire, but they go into a relationship with that person, and then they just start to lose interest because they found out, no, there's nothing really special. But outside, it looks very special, but once you get inside, it may not be anything special. So they start to lose interest, and that's why he's saying it could potentially turn sour. Or the other reason is that that possession is taken away from you, right? You have acquired it, but then that is taken away, whether that person has lost interest in us or that person has been taken away by nature, by death, or something like that. And that can cause great pain. And the feelings of jealousy or resentment that derive from romance, right? It's more powerful than the most positive feelings of love in full bloom. Even parental love can turn bitter if unreciprocated, meaning that you love your child so much, you would give the word to that child, but that child is ungrateful. It can turn back, right? Turn around and really hurt us. And in Shakespeare's King Lear describes it as, child's ingratitude is sharper than a serpent's tooth. It can be very painful that you dedicate your whole word to that child. You want that child to the best, and you're pouring in all the resources that you have, emotional resources, physical resources, and at the end, that child turns around and slaps you in the face. I mean, that single slap can be very hurtful. Whereas a stranger slapping you in the face may not be painful. You can get over that. But a child, your own child, slaps you in the face, that will hurt the rest of the parent's life, right? So because of the possessiveness of it, that selfishness, that appetite, egoistic appetite that causes suffering. So the kind of affection and care that arises from that rises above selfishness, not expecting return, not karmically driven, but driven by free will, is called compassion or metta. So if we care about for somebody and we don't expect any return from them, and it's not that if they accept our care, we're fine. If they receive our care, we're fine too, because it is our free will that we want to help them. It's not that we're obligated to help them. And when we have that attitude, it's called passion, right? We're not expecting anything from that person, but we just want that person to be joyful. So selfishness, and egoism is what make us concerned only about ourselves. So if we allow our ego take over us, then we can only concern about ourselves. And when we are concerned and we're concerned only about ourselves, then we are isolating ourselves from the others. Eventually, we don't understand the other side. We're not putting ourselves in other people's shoes, if you will. And so we can only see our own needs, but we don't see the needs of others. And that is the danger of selfishness, is that we are blocking our view, not only we don't want to see, but our emotional view, right? Our spiritual view, we cannot communicate with them. So in order to have compassion arising in our heart, our heart strongly and stably, we should avoid two extremes. One extreme is that to think that everything is predetermined. Everything is karma. There's nothing that you can do. People are suffering, that's their problem. There's nothing that we can do. And that our destiny, their destiny cannot be changed. When we have that attitude, it makes us emotionally complacent and insensitive to others. And there is no motivation to help others. And as a result, we deprive ourselves from the opportunities to cultivate merits to help other people. That's one extreme, right? We may learn about Buddhism, we learn about karma, but we have understood it the wrong way, to think that everything is karma and that everything is predetermined. Right? So that's the wrong kind of understanding of karma. The second extreme that we should avoid is not needing anybody's help. We think we have control of our own destiny and that we don't need anybody's help. And that kind of thinking will make us feel that we are above others because there's nobody who can help us. We are above everybody, and that leads to arrogance. And of course, that leads to merit depletion. So avoiding the two extremes, the other option is the middle path, right? The middle path here, in order to get to the middle, to maintain the middle path, we should understand Buddhist principles properly. And in order to understand Buddhism properly and to maintain the middle path, we should understand that there is no ego, that we should not have egoistic attachment, and that will lead us to selflessness. So that's one aspect of it. That's half the story. The other half of the story is that in non-attachment, non-egoistic attachment, as we understand that there is responsibility for our own deeds. Right? While we are non-attached, we're not trying to control the world, but at the same time, we are responsible for the things that we do, the words that we say, right? And the thoughts that we develop in our mind. So although we know, for example, although that we know this body is unreal, it's impermanent, not real, but yet we are still responsible for the things that we do. That's the middle path. So we pray to the Buddhas for opportunities for cultivation, to allow us to sow the seed of merits, like we talked about last time. We should not pray to the Buddhas for the enjoyment of merits. We should not, when we pray to the Buddha, we should not pray to the Buddha for a good life, for everything going smoothly, but rather we pray to the Buddhas for opportunities to cultivate merits. Because when we do this, it is self-empowering. And when we are successful in the things that we do, we will not be corrupted by arrogance. So if we want a good life, we want joy in life, we don't pray to the Buddhas for luxuries or amenities, right? Things come to us easily. And we don't give out demands to the Buddhas. When we study Buddhism, when we're in front of the Buddha, we don't demand that the Buddhas will meet certain demands from us. But rather we pray for opportunities to help other people. So we pray for opportunities to treat others with loving kindness and compassion. That's what we should pray for. When we pray as such, we will start to radiate, and we start to change our consciousness, and we start to radiate the loving kindness, that energy, the atmosphere, radiance. And then what happens next? Well, we will start to attract people who have the same mindset, who are compassionate, and we'll attract, because we radiate certain kind of energy, we will attract certain kind of people. They will appear, and then when they are in our realm of, because we attract them, and now they're within our environment of loving kindness, then what happens? They will give us trouble, and they will give us difficulties. And why is that? Well, when we face difficulties, we don't retreat from those difficulties, those difficult people. Right? Because we are praying for opportunities to help people. And those people will come to receive help. If they were strong, if they were capable, they wouldn't need our help. Because they came to ask for help. That means we have to give them something. We have to give them that comfort. And so when we pray to the Buddha for opportunities to exercise our compassion, for opportunities to help other people, then we have to get to work, right? When work starts, we have to get to work. And so people will come, we will attract people, people will come, and there will be difficult situations for us appears in our life. There will be difficult people that will appear in our lives. And we have to seize the opportunity. We shouldn't retreat. We've asked for it, the Buddha has answered us. And now we're running away, which doesn't make sense. So we should seize the opportunities to take on those difficulties. And so we don't retreat. But what do? Well, we pray to the Buddha even more. We pray to the Buddha even more. But what do we pray for? Well, we don't pray that the difficult situations go away, that those difficult people disappear out of our lives. But we pray for the strength, right? For the courage in exchange for a strong conviction towards our goal of enlightenment, that we don't give up. Difficult situations may occur, but we don't run away from them. But we still pray to the Buddha for the courage and the strength to have that conviction towards our goal, that we don't lose sight of our goal, right? And we don't regress ourselves. So that's the middle path. While we know that this body is unreal, this life is impermanent, but yet we maintain a position of doing our best to make things better, right? To give joy, although life is impermanent. There is suffering, but yes, there is opportunity for us to give joy to others. And when we pray for the opportunities, our prayers will be answered with difficult situations and people in our lives. And we should not regress, but we should seize the opportunities to exercise, to realize our prayer, and to ask for the strength, right? We don't say that we can do this on our own, but we smartly utilize our prayer to the Buddha to maintain that middle path, to avoid being arrogant, and to avoid isolating ourselves, running away from problems, or thinking that we can do it all on our own. Right? So with the middle path, one gains strength and avoids failure, because by fulfilling our responsibilities and eliminating the importance of the ego, we're maintaining a spiritual balance, and we're avoiding failures because we are preventing arrogance from arising. Does it make sense? Right. So that's the middle path. Is that the middle path is very empowering, that we don't get stuck on any one of the two extremes. Right? One extreme is to not need anybody. We can do it on our own. The other extreme is to be dependent on somebody else and to give up because we think that everything is karma, everything is predetermined. There's nothing we can do to change things. So the middle path is very empowering because we gain strength and confidence in the process, but at the same time, we're avoiding a lot of pit holes and a lot of traps. Okay? So what is the difference between Buddhist compassion and worldly compassion? Worldly compassion is based on the ego, whereas Buddhist compassion is really based on merit cultivation. For example, there are many non-Buddhist people who are very kind, right? They do charity work, they go around, they dedicate their lives to helping others. But their kindness comes from the ego because they don't have to go to eliminate the ego. If they do, then that is the Buddhist path, right? Buddhism is different from other teachings, is that the core of Buddhism is to eliminate the ego, no self. So if they do kind deeds with the goal of eliminating the ego, then that is Buddhism. But we're comparing the world and Buddhism here, is that while the world does great deeds to help people, that benevolence, that kindness comes from the ego. So that means that there's the differentiation, and that they inevitably will see themselves above others who are receiving their help. So that's a hidden danger, and because it can easily cause rise to anger or arrogance. So the sacrifice that they have put it forth, right? They sacrifice their resources to help others. But later on, if others don't support the policies, the movement, then they turn around and get upset and may seek revenge of those who disagree. All right, may seek revenge on those who disagree. So that's worldly compassion, worldly kindness. In Bodhisattva Ideal in Shankarashita, he says that he's comparing the difference between worldly kindness and Buddhist kindness or compassion. Is that in Buddhism there is the advantage of precepts and meditation, whereas worldly kindness, those people don't necessarily practice meditation. And the practice of meditation here generates thought power. He said thought is not a conceptual sense, but it's very real and positive. And it's a concrete thing. It's very realistic. One who wishes to be a bodhisattva has to develop this thought power through meditation. So a lot of things that we may think impossible become capable of achievement when we have thought power. And when our aspirations are backed up as they are in the case of Bodhisattva, by the tremendous thought power generated in meditation. And the reason is because when we sit in meditation, we focus, we are integrating all of our emotions and energies. And so it gives a lot of momentum. A humanitarian is all right. He's working on the ordinary level, right? Doing his best to help people. But his thought is comparatively feeble, very weak. And it's not been concentrated by meditation. His energies have not been integrated. He hasn't been able to generate the higher degrees of thought power, and therefore he isn't able to operate on a higher dynamic planes, jhana. When we study Buddhism and we go out to help the world, there is a difference, but compared to a person who does not follow the Buddhist path and helps the world. This may sound quite of a burden for us to think that we can take on the world and help the world. But let's see how it truly is. In his book, Wisdom Beyond Words by Sangarisita, he said that when we think about compassion, it's generally about some individuals or some group of individuals. And that when we see people suffering, we'll cause rise to compassion or some pity on them, right? But bodhisattvas don't see individuals, don't see people as those who are in need of help, because they perceive the truth of selflessness, the truth of non-individuality. So when they go out and help people, they don't see the pitiful people that they're helping. And it is out of this perception, this realization of sunyata, emptiness, the compassion of the bodhisattva arises. So in the world, humanitarian help arises from the ego, where you see there's a distinction between I am the helper, I'm the giver, you're the receiver. You need help, oh, poor you, let me help you. Whereas a bodhisattva going out into the world to help people, it is not because there is a pitiful person needing help, but he helps based on the perceptions, the realization of the truth of sunyata, right? Emptiness. Kong, right? Emptiness. And non-individuality. So a compassion which we perceive or interpret as compassion for individuals. But how does a bodhisattva without any notion of beings actually go about leading them to nirvana? How does, if you don't see anybody needing help, then how do you help anybody? The simple answer is that he or she doesn't, or rather that he or she only appears to do so. Like on an ordinary level, you see somebody needing help, you go and you help them. And you're being kind and decent to other people, but but to bodhisattvas, they have no such notion. It's just their nature. Like for example, you're sitting at a dinner table and somebody asks you to pass salt. You just naturally pass the salt without saying, you pitiful guest, you need salt, huh? I'm gonna give you some salt. I'm gonna provide you that generosity. It's just natural that we pass the salt to them. So to bodhisattvas who are out in the world to help people, it's just their nature to do so. So they don't see the distinction between themselves helping and the others receiving. So in the same way, bodhisattvas help people freely and spontaneously without having any definite notions of helping people. So they are essentially free of self-consciousness, and because their bodhisattva vow that they has permeated through to the very depths of their being. It's their core. It's so natural, so spontaneous for them to behave that way, right? From their point of view, there is nothing special about it. It's just passing the salt. There's no. You don't claim hero, to be a hero of passing the salt to your guests. It's just very natural. It's just a very common thing to do, right? So it is the arising of the bodhisattva, which is putishin, the bodhi mind, which is the will to enlightenment, the bodhidhamma bodhicitta, is the will to enlightenment, which defines a bodhisattva. From that vow, the expression of that vow is through the practice of the 6 paramitas. Right? And the 6 paramitas is the practice of bodhisattva. And the very fundamental is giving. So it's very natural for them to give, to help people. A non-bodhisattva may have to think quite consciously and deliberately about taking the vow. Right? We may first come to Buddhism, and we're asked to take the precepts. We may think consciously about it. Oh, should I take the precepts? If I take the precepts, then what if I make mistakes? Am I gonna have sin? So, but a bodhisattva doesn't have that thinking. It's just that actually precept is just something that they would do anyway. They don't kill, they don't steal. It's just their own way of being. So not only is the vow in no way a vow in the ordinary sense, but a vow to lead all sentient beings to nirvana can seem like a large responsibility for any individual to take, right? So can this tremendous responsibility really rest on the shoulders of one individual? Because when we take the bodhisattva vows, we don't say, I vow to collaborate with other bodhisattvas to help sentient beings. But you vow to save all sentient beings, right? There's no collaboration in that. So by not understanding that, the vow taking, it can put on a lot of tremendous stress on ourselves, saying, I have no ability to help other people. Sometimes I can't help other people. And so because of that, that fear arises of taking the bodhisattva vows. But we can begin to solve this by trying not to take too literally the idea of bodhisattva as an individual taking personal responsibility for the task. That's not what it means when we have vowed to deliver all sentient beings to nirvana, to joy. It doesn't mean that we're now taking on the personal responsibility for saving every sentient being there that exists. But it is rather that the bodhisattva perceives that the highest need of all beings is enlightenment. And that is the motivation, is to help all sentient beings to achieve enlightenment. Bodhisattva sees the mess people are in and perceives that the only real remedy for their plight is spiritual remedy. Right? You may give money to solve them, their hunger, but then they'll go back and do the same thing again to create suffering for themselves. So the best way to help them, to get them out of suffering, is to empower them with principles, with understanding, so that they can help themselves. Right? The only way that we can truly help them is for them to help themselves. Right? We cannot help them forever, but to help them so that they can do things themselves to better themselves. That's why when we pray to the Buddha, we don't pray for joy, but we pray for opportunities to cultivate merits. This way it's self-empowering. Because if we continue to receive givings from the Buddhas, we are not empowering ourselves, we're not helping ourselves. So when we pray to the Buddha, we should not pray for the results, but we should pray for the cause, the opportunities to do the right things. Right? The Bodhisattva identifies with this need of being so clearly and completely that all of his or her energies become devoted to its fulfillment. As a result, there is no energy left over to consider, I'm doing this. You give an example. You're at the present of some terrible accident, a car accident, and somebody needs help, right? Somebody's bleeding, and somebody has to call the paramedics. But then, so you see that's terrible, and you jump in to pull that person out before the car explodes and whatnot. So you don't simply you just simply throw yourself wholeheartedly into the practical business of helping them, but you don't have time to say, look at me, I'm casting rise to my bodhisattva vow, I'm gonna be saving this person. Yeah, there's no time for that. You just jump in and you help. So all of your energies are devoted to helping resolving that situations. So when we practice Buddhism, that is the benefits, is that we go through precepts, meditation, and wisdom. When we have meditation, we're concentrating, integrating our energies. And that's why we don't see the distinction between that person's needing help. We're going to be helping them. But we see there is a situation and somebody needs to do something, and we're going to do it. So there's no time left to think about, because our energies are not scattered, right? If we have to think, I'm going to do this, let's see how much benefit I'm going to get out of it. If somebody's going to be interviewing me for 6 o'clock news, am I going to be on TV? That's scattering thought. But when we practice Buddhism, compared to we're helping people without practicing Buddhism, is that we can concentrate our energies. Does it make sense? Right? So that's why when we do good deeds, it is important to practice Buddhism, meditation. It allows us to concentrate our energy so we can focus on the things at hand. Okay. So that's the difference between worldly kindness and Buddhist compassion. And here, for the worldly kindness, those who don't practice Buddhism, don't practice meditation, their energies are not integrated, and they're only helping people. They're only helping people based on really their emotions, their feelings at a time. When they motivate something, they feel very encouraged, right? When they hear somebody giving a pep talk, they get all riled up and they're ready to go. And then without that talk, then they just calm down again. They have lost their motivation to help. And so that's worldly. And that is because the humanitarianism can be easily influenced by the 8 winds. Right? There's praise, ridicule, suffering, happiness, benefit, or we call it destructions, gain, and loss. In other words, when there's praise on the positive side, they do good deeds. But should they face oppositions, they lose their interest, and they may even take revenge on those who don't support them, right? So that's worldly, because there is no concentration of energies. There's no definitive directions. It's just that whatever that brings benefits to them, they'll do it. If it will cost them to disadvantages, they will stop, because they are being affected by the 8 winds. Right? Whereas the Bodhisattva's mind is grounded and integrated, right, through the development of precepts and meditation. We should have compassion towards 2 types of people. One is those who treat us nicely and whom we like and admire. The other kind is that we should also have compassion towards those who want to harm us and those whom we dislike. So whether they like us or they dislike us, if we practice the Bodhisattva way, we don't have that distinction, because the Bodhisattva helps that other people based on the realizations of the truth, the egolessness, not based on the ego. And therefore, the Bodhisattva doesn't see these 2 distinctions. These 2 distinctions here are really for us to differentiate, but when we get to the Bodhisattva level, we don't see that distinction anymore. But for us to get to that level, we first have to understand the 2 distinctions and slowly minimize the gap between the 2, right? Of course, this is easier said than done. It is more difficult to visualize and radiate compassion towards those whom we feel upset and just by just thinking about them, our blood boils, right? So it's very difficult to sit there and think kind thoughts towards them. I mean, they disagree with us, they give us difficulties, and therefore it's almost so unrealistic to wish them well. But we should continue the compassion visualization practice in order to break that emotional and that mental barrier. It is difficult because there is a barrier, not that the barrier is real, but it is because we have created that barrier. We have blocked them, ourselves from them. So even though it's difficult, we continue to practice, and soon we will be able to slowly reduce that wall, that separation, and now we'll be able to see the needs. We no longer see our own needs only, but we can also see the needs of others. So when we practice compassion visualization, it helps us to maintain our emotional and spiritual positivity. And why is that important? Why do we need to practice compassion? I mean, compassion is to develop our positivity. That's one function of compassion. It helps us to maintain our positivity. And positivity is something that you need to have in order to enter meditation, because in meditation, it is all about joy. It's very blissful, and that is positivity. If you are upset, you cannot enter meditation. You cannot sit in meditation. You'll be agitated. Only when you can radiate loving kindness, radiate gratitude, you feel grateful for the things that have happened to you, good or bad. Only when you have that kind of mindset can you sit in meditation, right? If you feel agitated, you cannot meditate. And so if we are successful in meditation, that means that we are successful in maintaining positivity. So the first person who benefits from our study is ourselves. When we practice Buddhism, we will have that positivity, and therefore we will benefit from that positivity. And this positivity it's not just in the mind, but it helps to maintain a healthy body as well. Whereas negativity can hurt the body. So when you have anger, it's not just a mental thing. It can ruin your health, right? It could eat into your vitals, and it could really mess up the body. And so in Sankarsita's book, Bodhisattva Ideal, he says that the negative emotions are literally poisonous. So this is not just a mental thing, but it is literally poisonous to our systems. So for example, when one is overpowered by strong negative emotion, such as anger and hatred, one gets a stabbing pain in the stomach or the heart, right? You feel it. And that is the poison eating into one's vitals. You can feel it. I mean, you have blood pressure. You're angry. You maintain a high blood pressure. That is fundamental for all kinds of diseases to arise, right? So it's not just a mental thing, but it has physical effects when we have negative emotions. What we're going to do? Well, we cannot just leave it. We have to resolve it. So studying Buddhism is not about entering meditation so you can forget about the anger that you have, but to eliminate it. And the best way to eradicate the passions, the afflictions. Here he uses passions, but it means afflictions, 烦恼, phiền não. The passions is to attack them at the source, and that is the mind, the hideout, right? The source of our anger is the mind. That's it. So we don't get. Let's say that we are angry and we slap somebody in the face. We don't chop the hand or slap ourselves, but we should control our mind. That's where the source is. And this is one of the effects of meditation, is to control the mind, to raise positivity in the mind, to overcome the negativity. And there are 5 meditation exercises that we can use to eliminate to destroy the hideout of those negativity. One is distraction. Distractions is something that it disintegrates our energies. The antidote for this is the meditation practice called the mindfulness of breathing, right? When we sit in meditation, we focus on our breathing, and that is to help concentrate the mind and to eliminate distractions. And the second is anger. And anger is something that bodhisattvas like. Yesterday, Mr. Chen in his lecture said that a bodhisattva, it's okay to have desire. But it is absolutely opposite of the bodhisattvahood is to have anger. Because at least with desire, there is still a passion to maintain something to, let's say you desire for your greed for merit, you will go out and do good deeds, right? There may be greed of acquiring merits, but at least you benefit somebody by doing good deeds. But if there's anger, then it's game over for being a bodhisattva, because anger is very destructive and it doesn't help. It is completely the opposite of bodhisattva, right? So it says that you can give way to craving and desires. You can steal and lie, and in your heart of hearts, you may still be a bodhisattva. You may, you may help. In other words, you will help people at the end. But if you lose your temper, bang goes all your bodhisattvahood. And so that's why anger is the antithesis of bodhisattvahood. It's completely against being a bodhisattva. And you have to start over again. If you have that anger, you have fallen back to square one. So the reason is that anger is directly opposed to the spirit of compassion. That's why. And bodhisattva, the fundamental of bodhisattva is compassion. But if you have anger, then you are destroying that foundation, and therefore is the complete opposite of the spirit of bodhisattvahood. In Santideva Sangarsita, it says, after we developed our bodhisattva vows to save our sentient beings, we say, well, here you are, promising to deliver all beings from difficulties and to be kind and compassionate to them. And then what do? You go and get angry with one of them. Right? They don't do the things that we want to do, and then we get angry with them. That's not bodhisattva. Right? So, in other words, bodhisattva, when we take vow bodhisattva, when we practice bodhisattva, we have to put it into practice. Because otherwise, there can be much substance to our bodhisattva vow. Or we take vows to help all sentient beings, but then yet we get angry with them. We want to take revenge on them, we want to hurt them, then really there's no substance behind that vow. So bodhisattva is advised to avoid anger at all costs, because anger is something that is the direct opposite of a bodhisattvahood. The antidote, the treatment of anger, is quite simple. It is metta bhavana, which is compassion, visualization. That's the development of universal loving kindness. Right? In this meditation, it is one of the 4 Brahma Viharas. Brahma Viharas are 4 immeasurables. 四无量心, tứ vô lượng tâm. And this is the nature of a Brahma, which is the king in heaven, in the first level of the 4 jhanas. The metta practice is first taught by the Buddha, called a Metta Buddha. It's quite a short of a sutra called the Karaniya Metta Sutta, right? The Buddha's words on loving kindness. This is what should be done. by one who is skilled and in goodness, and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be reborn. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life a child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being free from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. So the sutra is very beautiful, it's very short. So this right here is not born into this world. I will go into the details just a little bit. So we'll stop here and we'll go back to our explanation here. So metta, compassion, may not be an easy thing to practice. But if we can persevere, then we can be confident that anger and hatred will gradually be dispelled, right? So even though it's very difficult, there is mental, emotional barrier, but we should continue to push to knock down that barrier. And eventually, with our perseverance, we will overcome hatred and anger. So how is compassion related to enlightenment? And why should we practice enlightenment? Let's see what Shingasisa has to say. So in the last word, remember, we just, of the sutra, the final words of the Metta Sutra that we just read, never again is he born or reborn to this world, suggests that the goal of metta is a depth of transcendental realization that frees the practitioner from the sufferings of repeated rebirth. So it's not about escaping this world completely and never to return, never to see the difficult people, the difficult situations again, but to be free from suffering of repeated rebirth. So when we are free from the cycle of life and death, it doesn't mean that we are off to somewhere, never to be seen again. But we have no fear, no suffering in helping people, in living our lives. Does it make sense? Right? So simply put, in developing metta, compassion, 慈悲, từ bi, we are deepening our emotional involvement with the truth of anatta, or no self, right? Uwo, vô ngã. So when we develop metta, compassion, we are really developing or realizing the truth. We are practicing the truth. The unenlightened person takes the self to be real, to be permanent. And this kind of thinking has profound negative effects on every aspect of our lives, our experience. Because at the back of that all negative emotion is the thought, what is it that's for me? What's in it for me? What am I getting out of it? because until we realize that non-ego, non-self, even if our cultivation is a positive one, we have kindness towards other people, there will always be a sense of the self, the ego, that acts to pull us back. It's like a gravitational pull that takes us back, and it prevents us from reaching the height of positivity. And that's why it is so difficult for our friendliness, our kindness towards others to be truly selfless, because of the ego. Right? That's why there's a difference between being kind in the world, a normal mundane person, compared to a Buddhist being kind to the world. Right? So can you see the difference between Buddhist compassion and worldly compassion? Right? Worldly compassion, because of the ego, that can never be truly selfless. So as we continue to expand the scope of our care and concern, the self is universalized. One may say expanded indefinitely, meaning there's no distinction. We help ourselves is the same as helping other people. It's the same as helping stranger. It's the same as helping our family. There's no distinction because it's universal, and it's selfless. This does not mean that we have to transform our sense of who we are according to the idea of how we should be. In other words, when we practice Buddhism and compassion, it's not that we are changing ourselves to become a completely different person, but rather that our direct experience of ourselves should be that we are continually going out to be aware of and concerned for the well-being of others, not fixed on any single point of identity. Meaning that we don't see that person is needing help and we label them as needy, and we're the giver. And we don't have to change ourselves to become somebody completely different. All we need to do is just to maintain our awareness of the needs of others, the needs of ourselves, and the needs of others. Right? Does it make sense? This directly experience insight into the truth of no self, anatta, is the first real breakthrough on the journey towards enlightenment. So when we practice Buddha's compassion, we are on the journey towards enlightenment, because we are eliminating that ego. Does it make sense? That's why, do you see now why compassion is critical, is essential in Buddhism? It's just not a nice thing to do. It's not being nice, but it has its real effects. It's leading to enlightenment, because through metta, through compassion, that we are eliminating the distinction between ourselves and others. Our needs, their needs are the same, that we help them just like we are helping ourselves. It is traditionally known as Sotapatti, or stream entrance, right? Who has broken the fetter of self-view. Right? We talk about self-view, seeing ourselves, distinction between ourselves and other, or that we are lasting, or that we don't exist after death. So those are false views. An idea that is ultimately a source of our unhappiness and lack of fulfillment. When we have our self-view and ego, that is the source of suffering and pain. This insight is not merely cognitive, not a matter of intellectual assent to a logical proposition. So it's not just learning, but we have to put it to practice, and we have to experience it in the form of a fully developed positivity. So our compassion is not just for us to study, but we have to experience it, and we have to fully develop it. If we could really see that there is no difference between our own true interest and those of others, then metta would come naturally, right? It would naturally arise. As for our capacity for positive emotion grows stronger, self-reference, the ego, becomes more and more difficult to detect. We cannot see clearly that there's a definite distinction between our needs and other people's needs. We just do it. When we ourselves needs help, we just help ourselves. And when we see other people need help, we just help them without saying, what's in it for me if I help them? So the Buddhist tradition offers another way of understanding the situation. So in the Abhidhamma, which is a Theravada text, it says that Brahma Vaharas, which is 无量心, right? The four immeasurables, are positive and highly skillful mental events, but they lack any element of insight. So from their perspective, they don't, in other words, being nice is not going to get you to enlightenment. That's what it's saying. Because being nice here, practicing this meditation on wisdom, meditation on compassion, is classified as samatha practice. It's just calming meditation. But one needs the development of vipassana in order to gain insight. But then Abhidhamma here says that Brahma Viharas can be transformed by the insight generated by sustained reflection. They will then arise naturally from the clear knowledge that there is no real difference between self and others. In other words, when we sit in meditation and we radiate compassion, that is not enough. That is not enough for us to realize the truth. So I think this is very telling. This is very important. When we practice meditation and we radiate compassion, loving kindness toward other people, all sentient beings, that is not enough. That is just only samatha practice. We have to cause rise to insight. And so it's not just radiating loving kindness, but you have to, in that visualization, you have to see the no self impermanence, right? And the satisfaction, and that there is no difference between ourselves and others. You have to eliminate that ego. So in whatever meditation that we do, if we're just there to enjoy, to feel good about our meditative bliss, that's not good enough. We may be kind and radiate compassion, but that's not good enough. We have to see no self in that visualization. Only when we have this understood will we be able to cultivate wisdom. Does it make sense? So when we practice the four immeasurables, loving kindness, we're helping, we have this joy, it's not enough. We have to see no self in that practice, in that visualization. So in the Theravada tradition, enlightenment is generally spoken of as a state in which the self has been eliminated, right? That's called nirvana or nibbana, meaning snuffed out, blown out. So Theravada, they see nirvana, enlightenment, the self has been eliminated. But in the sutra, the Metta Sutra, it has the same aim too, but it sees it in a positive way, and that is that not as the elimination of the ego, but as a deeply realized attitude of even-mindedness towards all. Right? You're radiating your loving kindness to all, but there is no self in it. There's no ego in it. Does it make sense? Right? In Theravada, it's just about eliminating the ego. In Mahayana, there is eliminating the ego too, but it's at the same time it's radiating loving kindness and developing wisdom in that process. So it's really the same goal, but it depends on how you look at it. You could turn it into your personal limited goal or your universal goal, right? Same practice, but with different result because of your attitude and your mind. So there are other reasons of the Pali canon that makes it abundantly clear that the negative emotions
that bind sentient beings to the will of rebirth. And that positive emotions are not just conducive, but absolutely necessary to the attainment of insight. This is why the practice of compassion is so important. It helps to develop our positivity. Negativity will bind you to the will of life and death. And therefore, we have no choice but to develop that positivity. And meditation is a very effective way in developing that positivity. And the practice of meditation will lead to insight. And it is necessary for insight, for wisdom. And only wisdom allows you to escape, be liberated from the cycle of life and death. Right? So insight is realization, a state of equalness. If you care for others, it's made genuinely equal to your care for yourself. Your whole attitude is egoless. Right? If your experience is just emotional, then, and it's not based on much reflection, meaning you don't use visualization, 观察, right? Visualization, 观察, then that's not insight. So if we experience, if we develop positive emotions, but it's just emotions, there's no understanding, there's no seeing the truth, no reflection of no self, no impermanence, then we will not lead to insight. We just don't study Buddhism, but we have to live it. We have to experience it. We have to develop it fully. So a common misapprehension, misunderstanding here is that insight and egolessness are abstract. They're just spiritual. But realizing the truth of egolessness means that being truly and deeply unselfish. So, in other words, we may find it difficult to practice metta fully. And the solution is just try to be a little less selfish, right? Every day, just reduce that little by little. The understanding comes after experience, not before. So when it is less than fully developed, lack the clear awareness, insight will arrive through reflection on the Dhamma, meaning that even if we feel like we are not there yet, but because our reflection when we practice meditation and we continue to reflect on the principles, no self, right, impermanence, it will break through. Sooner or later, that will develop to its fullness. So in short, metta and insight are not separate aims. Metta is a necessary aspect of insight, wisdom. And with reflection on the real nature of metta, insight will shine through, right? So when we reflect on impermanence, egolessness, insight will shine through. Having developed metta in a limited sense, you go on, you reflect, and you will see that you'll ask yourself, is there really any difference between yourself and others? And what difference may that be? So the more that you reflect, you begin to see that I and you and others will begin to blend with insight. You will see less and less of the distinction. Does it make sense? Okay, a few minutes left. Let's finish this. So how do we know that we truly care about other people? Well, there are 4 ways to tell. A bodhisattva understands the needs of others, emotionally, physically, and so forth. When you begin to understand the needs of others more than your own, then you are beginning to truly care about others. Right? They understand how the bodhisattva understands how other people feel and whether they're happy or they're sad, and they become more attentive. Second way to tell is that bodhisattva brings joy, willing to bring joy to other people, providing what's needed, without corrupting them. And the third way is that when other people are successful, a bodhisattva doesn't expect return or become jealous. That I helped you to become successful, now for you to scratch my back. I scratched your back, now you scratch my back. A bodhisattva doesn't have that. So when you help somebody without expecting return, then you are truly caring about other people. Or should they have mistakes, should they have faults, a bodhisattva forgives and does not seek revenge, right? But finds way and opportunities to help them correct their mistakes. So if we're concerned too much about other people, is that going to cause a burden on us? Is that going to cause afflictions? Well, if we have compassion, true compassion towards other well-being, it does not disturb us. It actually cultivates merit, and merit is the foundation for meditation. If we are selfish and we're only concerned about ourselves, and we have worries, that concerns about our own well-being will cause more stress. But if we go out there to help other people, we may be stressful at the moment because we have to plan, we have to do a lot of hard work, but that in the process, we are cultivating merits. And behind merit is joy, right? Behind selfishness is suffering. And so we shouldn't worry that by having concerns, helping other people, that will cause afflictions for ourselves, that will bring troubles to ourselves. But we should understand that when we help others, we generate merits. And joy is what lies behind the merits, right? Joy is helping others to make this world a better place, right? And happiness, joy, is built upon merits. Does it make sense? So compassion is important, and it's different from those who do good deeds without studying Buddhism. Their mind is not fixed, they're not concentrated. When we study Buddhism meditation, our energies are concentrated. We have determination without being affected by the 8 winds. And because of that, that we are very determined, and we develop egolessness along the way, and that leads to enlightenment. Because in order to get to enlightenment, we need to have wisdom. And in order to have wisdom, we can use meditation with reflection to see behind the truth behind things. And that truth is no self, impermanence, and dissatisfaction that helps us to be motivated to achieve something more. And when in the process of helping others, that we develop the foundation of merits, and that is where joy arises from. Right? Joy comes from merits. Suffering comes from selfishness. Okay? Okay, that is all for today. So we will do merit dedication. Please join your palms together. We recite. May the merits and virtues accrue today adorn the Buddha Pure Lands, repay 4 types of kindness above, and aid those suffering in the paths below. May those who see and hear of this bring forth the resolve for the Bodhi mind. When this retribution body is complete, together we shall meet in the land of ultimate bliss.